Hello and welcome to Sales Development Represent, a video series dedicated to best practices and actionable tips for the modern day SDR. In this episode, we're diving into sales development process, all the way from research to outreach. And joining us today is an industry-leading veteran of the sales world, Chris Beall, who is the CEO of sales enablement tool Connect and Sell. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris.
Hey, great to be here today, Grayson.
Awesome. So to frame this conversation, SDRs, I think, have one of the hardest jobs in sales. You know, they're contacting complete strangers out of nowhere, disrupting their day to try to convince them to have a meeting about problems that they think their organization can solve. And I think the big problem is that many reps focus too much on selling their product or service as if they were going to close the deal while really neglecting the true purpose behind having a meeting. So to kick this off to you, Chris, you know, what should the mindset be for SDRs in their role? Is it about selling that solution, or is it really focused on that initial meeting?
It's about the initial meeting, and there's a why behind that that's super important. So the problem that a company is trying to solve by having a sales development function, which, by the way, I believe is not only the most challenging role in sales, but probably the most important job in the company. So when I'm being an SDR as the CEO, I'm doing more important work than anything except maybe occasionally something like raising money. You know, sometimes it's important to have money around, but it's super important to reach out into the new market that you're trying to move into, and to get to and form relationships with those people at those companies that you want to do business with before your competitor takes them off the market. That's really the key to the whole thing. And so the SDR function isn't just what some people think, which is a specialized or relatively inexpensive, they might think, way of going to market and making sure that you're having meetings with the right people, you know, where the outcome is the meeting. The SDR's true job is to do what I call paving the market with trust. Because trust can only be formed between two people. It takes a huge amount of information flow between two people to get any trust to happen. According to Chris Voss, the Never Split the Difference author, from the FBI's research and other similar research done at Harvard Business School and elsewhere, against the hot fires of hostage negotiation, which is a really tough SDR job, is to make a cold call to somebody to sell them a 20-year jail sentence and get them to release a hostage. They found that you have 7 seconds to get trust, and it's the SDR's job to get that. Without trust, you have nothing in the marketplace. You're worth nothing as a company in the marketplace. So if you really look at the SDR's job in terms of the role within the strategy of the company, the go-to-market strategy of the company they work for, much more than as a cog in a machine within a sales organization, one, it's super important. It's the same role as the hostage negotiator's role is in a hostage situation. It's the most difficult role. It's the most important. Two, it's super urgent that the SDR have a mindset that allows the person that they're speaking with to trust them, even if they don't set a meeting. And three, they should focus on their job, which is to set the meeting, because in the meeting, the prospect can come to the meeting and they can confess. They can confess what's true about their situation. Whereas in an ambush call, in a cold conversation, or even a follow-up conversation with an SDR, the prospect's mindset is more important than the SDR's. And the prospect's mindset is, hey, I'm not going to tell you the truth about myself right now because you ambushed me. And it's extremely rare for somebody to cough up their deep inner truths, which is what you need in sales, is for the prospect to do that in an ambush conversation. So there's a natural limit to an ambush conversation. And it's true, by the way, of all cold approaches. Email is the worst, because in the email situation, you don't have enough information to get somebody to trust you. It's maybe 5,000 bits in an email. You need about 600,000 bits in order to kind of seal the deal on trust, and about 150,000 to get it going. And that's a few seconds of conversation. About 7 seconds of conversation is about 140,000 bits of information. That's enough with tone of voice, with prosody, with all the things we can bring as humans to get somebody to trust us. So when you look at the SDR's true job, pave the marketplace with trust in order to take care of the current situation. Hey, who can we get in a meeting? And all future situations. Who isn't ready now? Because by the way, only 1/12 of your market is in market right now. There's 12 quarters in 3 years. The replacement cycle for B2B products is about 3 years. So you have an active opportunity to get about 1/12 of the folks you speak to into a meeting that's meaningful to them within the next quarter. And what are you going to do with the rest? Well, you better do something. And what you're going to do is you're going to create trust with them. So when you talk with them a second time, a third time, a fourth time, they'll take the meeting. The bad move, the move you must not make to get the meeting is to try to sell the product. So oddly, the reason to stay away from your product is that it gives the prospect a very inexpensive way that saves face, that keeps their self-image intact, of turning down the meeting. When you tell the prospect what your product's about, you're actually telling them that they are both incompetent and negligent. That they're incompetent because they don't know what's important, and they're negligent because they didn't bother to check out an important solution. And that's just too much for somebody to stomach on a first conversation. So you can get there with curiosity, but you can't get to the meeting efficiently or even effectively with a bunch of product talk, because product talk allows the prospect to say, and we've all heard it 100 times, 1,000 times, oh, thanks so much, Grayson. You know, we're set. That's a person saying back to you, thanks for calling me up and telling me that I'm incompetent and negligent. I'd rather end this conversation. And they do it in a very polite tone of voice, because now they don't have to worry about their self-image anymore. You gave them an out, and the out is, hey, you just told me what this is about. No reason to attend the meeting. You told me what it's all about. It's about this category of problem and product, and the fact that you have one and you think you're great. And by the way, when you say you think you're great, people push back. They push back instantly. So when you come at them and say, you know, we help companies like yours, X, Y, Z, that's like, oh, wait a minute. So you're telling me these other people are smarter than me and that you're smarter than them by helping them. So I must be the dumb guy in this conversation. So you're calling me a dumb guy. I don't think that's not quite right. And they push back, and you get to what I call the third grade playground. And the place you never want to end up in a sales conversation is the third grade playground. Yes, you are. No, you aren't. Yes, you are. No, you aren't. It doesn't work. Right? You've got to progress the conversation as adults. And that means, oddly enough, you need to get to the most playful part of our personalities, which is curiosity. If you get curiosity, you can get the meeting. Let the meeting do its job. Don't try to do the meeting's job. Let the meeting do its job. The meeting is a confessional. It's a place where somebody can come voluntarily. They can be comfortable. They know they're not being sold to because they came voluntarily. If a sales rep starts to sell to you in a meeting, you can say, huh, that's interesting. I thought you were going to tell me some stuff that's new. Now you're just telling me about the product. So you offer them a lot of outs if you start selling the product, but trust the meeting to do its job, which, by the way, includes qualifying. If you qualify in the cold call or the follow-up call, in the SDR call, I'll call it, the sales development call is a bad place to qualify. And I know AEs want you to qualify. I get it. And they think they're the kings of the universe and that everything should be on a silver platter for them. But their job is to hear the confession, elicit the confession, hear the confession, qualify based on the confession plus other information. It's their job to qualify, and if you don't let them do their job, you are going to qualify out the best deal that your company was ever going to get, and that deal is going to go to a competitor. So when you start qualifying in a sales development conversation, you are actively working for your competitors. You're actually spending your company's money to do your competitors' work, and that is bad, bad business indeed.
Yeah, I think you brought up a couple of really important points in there that I think a lot of reps really need to understand when they're having these conversations is buyers are empowered and they've got a ton of research at their disposal where they can dive into any number of things about an organization, understand the product, the solution. Like you said, you're not supposed to, or you're not intended to let someone know about the product on the call. You really want to be that, and I've heard this a couple of times in the past month, so I know it's smart, the delta between what somebody already knows about your product, your space, your solution, and what you want to get them to, that curiosity piece that you're speaking of, to the point where they're learning something on this cold call, a really quick hitter like, oh, I didn't realize that, pique the curiosity, and then sell the meeting versus the solution itself. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see a lot of reps make now is they're trying to sell their product like you were talking about. Do you see any other really common mistakes that new SDRs are making when they're kind of getting ramped up into the role? Or is that like the end all be all big mistake that you're seeing these days?
Well, it's certainly the biggest mistake that essentially destroys companies' ability to go to market. So if you're looking to put your company out of business, it's the big mistake. And that's not your job, right? Your job is to take the company into the market, into places they would not have had opportunities otherwise. Otherwise, why have an SDR? So the other big mistake, though, in mindset is the mistake regarding the understanding of fear. And SDRs tend to focus on their own fear. It's perfectly natural, right? We're all afraid of invisible strangers. We're afraid of strangers in general. We've been taught to be afraid of strangers. By the way, that's not an irrational thing to be taught. If you really think about the world and divide it into family, friends, and strangers and say which is the more dangerous category, well, statistically, it's family. That's true. You're more likely to be murdered by a family member than anybody else. However, in the large, there's a lot more strangers than there are family members. You keep an eye on your family. So in the large, we're afraid of strangers. That is, one of them could have bad intentions towards us and the power to do something about it. So we focus as sales reps, we all do, on our own fear. And then what we try to do is overcome our fear through something like bravado. And you see tons of information out there telling SDRs, buck up, be brave, get yourself pumped, do this, do that. Back to the matter is, and this is again FBI findings, it's the other party who is afraid 100% of the time. That is, when you ambush somebody in a cold call especially, their reaction is, I have been ambushed by an invisible stranger. And in the environment of evolution, the most scary thing in the world, worse than tigers and snakes even, and worse than blood, which is like the worst. Nobody likes the sight of blood, right? That's why it's so hard to get good surgeons nowadays. Worse than all of that are those people that live across the river. We don't talk to them. They paint their faces horizontal. We paint ours vertical. They put a bone in their nose. We put a bone in our ears, just like all proper people do. They talk funny. We don't like them. And when it's nighttime, they're invisible. And when they show up at night, they're not bringing us a Bud Light. They're coming to change the future demographics of our village. And they're going to do it rather suddenly. So we don't like that, right? And people respond to being ambushed by invisible strangers essentially with what seems like anger. Because the natural thing we do when we're afraid of another human being is we get pissed off at them because they scared us. And we don't like that. So we push back, we get distance, right? This is like the SDR experiences the original social distancing well before COVID. We say a word and they push back, and 6 feet ain't far enough, right? They're trying to get all the way away. And for them, it's like, man, I'm stuck. How do I get out of this without compromising my self-image as a good person? Because I'm not supposed to be mad at people just for saying hello to me, but here I find myself being mad at somebody for saying hello to me. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try to get out of the situation like we all do with fear. So SDRs need to recognize you're the scary one. Get that in your head. And then ask yourself this question. Well, if I'm scaring this person, is that good or bad with regard to my control over the next step of the conversation? Because in sales, we have to control our own emotions in order to allow the conversation to flow to a place that has potential value for the person we're talking to. So it's like if you were to approach a horse and it's never met you before and you're going to try to get a bridle on it, bad idea to run at the horse. That doesn't work. The horse is bigger than you are. It's faster, it's stronger, and it kicks. Right? They bite too, by the way. I used to raise horses. Like they can do it from both ends quite nicely. So here you've got this big animal, the prospect, and if you run after them, they're going to outrun you. You got to get them to come to you. And the first thing you have to do is let their fear subside. And the way you do that is you simply show them that you see the world through their eyes. Because as soon as you're empathetic with somebody, and I don't mean empathy like, well, it must be really tough hanging out at home, you know, all day, not having to commute, having good meals, and not having your stupid boss yell at you, right? I mean, okay, so that kind of empathy is BS. This empathy, hey, I know I'm an interruption. I know I'm an interruption. If you say it in that time, I know I'm an interruption. That is true tactical empathy because they know you're an interruption too. So as soon as you indict yourself for being who you are, not for doing what you did, but for being who you are, you're an invisible stranger. That's the problem. The ambush is the secondary problem. That is, the invisible stranger became the invisible stranger by ambushing. So if you say the right things, and there's two of them you can say, there's a ton of these, right? I just have two I like. I know I'm an interruption. That shows that other person you see the world through their eyes. Then recognize they're afraid and they have a problem. Guess what the problem is? You. You are the problem. This is fantastic. This is the best of all possible worlds because you're now in control of solving the problem by offering to go away. So if you just say, can I have 27 seconds to tell you why I called? And you say it in a playful, curious voice like that, you put them in an interesting situation. They just calmed down and you showed them that you're competent to solve a problem they have right now. These are the two things it takes to get a human being to trust you, to go from invisible, scary stranger to provisional trust. And the first step in a sales development conversation, a live one with a human being, is to get, I'll call it a little dab of trust that you can use. By the way, once somebody trusts you, confirmation bias kicks in. They will trust you for the rest of your life unless you blow it. You don't actually have to do anything else. Just don't blow it. So how do you blow it? Try to sell them something. That'll blow it. That'll do it right off the bat because that is a betrayal of trust. Oh, I got you to trust me. Now I'm going to sell you something. I was just playing the piano the other night out of my Disney book. And my Disney book's got a lot of songs in it. I know, I love Disney songs, right? I can do those Little Mermaid songs like nobody's business. It's really quite remarkable. But there's a song in there that I flipped by the other night. I said, hey, Helen, you know, what do you think about this one? And it's the song that the python Kaa sings to Mowgli in order to get Mowgli to trust him so the python can eat him, right? Don't be Kaa. Don't sing the Trust in Me song intending to eat your victim. Do it with the intent to help them see the possibility that there's a meeting that they could attend at which they'll learn something. What will they learn? They'll learn something about money or risk or time, something economic. What else will they learn? Probably something about emotions, maybe reducing frustration. What else will they learn? Probably something about strategy. They're trying to go somewhere. You know, maybe your solution can help them get there. But you're not going to tell them all that. You're just going to intrigue them. But before you can get there to offering the possibility of the meeting, which is of value no matter what, whether you ever do business with them, they have to trust you. And you've got to say two kinds of things. One, I see the world through your eyes. Okay, that doesn't work. So how about, I know I'm an interruption, said just in that tone. And how about another one, which is, next thing you could say is, can I have 27 seconds to tell you why I called? Which is a playful, curious way of saying, you answered the phone. Let's talk for a bit. I'm okay.
Yeah, I really love that. And I love this idea of owning up to the fear and addressing it head on with the buyer and understanding that, yes, there is fear, but it's not anything other than you being the SDR on that cold call. And turning that into trust is the job. And it's one of the most difficult jobs out there. And I think it breaks down into two pieces based on what I've heard you say. You know, one, it's that psychology and how you're approaching your tone, you know, the speed at which you're talking, the way that you build curiosity or try to get that fear to subside. And then the other part is process and how SDRs use information and their knowledge about buyers to understand exactly what problems they would care about or exactly what curiosities might pique their interest. And I think that's fundamental because at the end of the day, information is the core of an SDR's role. So to kind of back into the process piece, you know, how should a rep be, you know, doing research and preparing for specifically cold outreach versus, you know, the discovery call or the meeting?
Sure. Well, let me address the hard cold outreach, which is the ambush call. the cold call. It turns out that the optimal research to do for a cold call is the research that tells you whether you want this particular individual to be on a list for a particular kind of meeting or not. And you end right there. You don't have enough time, you don't have enough trust in order to have a conversation that's specific to them. It has to be specific to them in the sense that you have a hypothesis about the market. That hypothesis translates into a list. There's no such thing as a market that's a description of something. That's a nonsense concept. A market is always a list of targets. The targets always have this particular characteristic, which is, were you to sell one of them, the others on the list become cheaper and lower risk to sell. It's called interreferencing. So if one goes, the others are more likely to go because they trust that one. You know, it's the way you get herd immunity, right? In a market, is you get a certain percentage of the market to have done business with you, and the rest of the market can't figure out anything else to do, so they just do business with you. So you're trying to break down those initial barriers of trust and get to curiosity. You don't need to know, for instance, whether my company has a CRM or not in order to talk to me about your CRM, because I might want to replace mine 3 years from now. You don't need to know that. Your job is not to actually go out and find just current hot opportunities. There's not enough public information anyway for you to reliably weave that information into a novel conversation. And on top of it, when you're cold calling, you only have a 1 in 22.4 chance of getting somebody on the phone. So say you did 3 minutes of research before each call. So 3 minutes of research, call, voicemail. Now you're stuck. You can leave a voicemail, which is an idiot's thing to do, because voicemail is a dead letter box. So you've now blown it because you can't leave a second, a third, or fourth voicemail. Spamming voicemail definitely is a no-go. For some reason, people are comfortable spamming email. I don't know why. They think it's okay. Maybe because they don't have to be there in order to endure the response to all the spammed email. If you watched all the look on the face of somebody discarding one more of your emails, you might not send them another cold email in your life. But spamming voicemail doesn't work. So you're in a quandary. So what are you going to do? Leave a voicemail or not? Well, you better not. If you don't, you just wasted 3 minutes of research. Now do the math. 3 minutes times 22. Let's make it easy. 3 times 20. So that means you do 60 minutes of research per conversation. Is it worth spending an hour for the marginal benefit of knowing something about somebody individually within a conversation when all you're trying to do is to get them curious enough to attend a meeting? And to be curious enough to attend a meeting, A, you need to be a human being. B, you have to have curiosity about whatever it is that's on offer in the meeting. So what is it that's on offer? Well, learning. Well, you just have to be a human being who's in a particular domain to want to learn about certain things. And by the way, if they don't want to learn that stuff, that is the one wonderful disqualifier you just got for free. Short conversation. They don't want to learn. Great. Talk to them next quarter. Maybe they'll change their mind. But trying to persuade somebody that they want to learn is completely ridiculous. Ever try that? I used to be a school teacher. That one doesn't work, by the way. You know, I am going to convince you that you want to learn something is a dying proposition that will die right in front of you. So your best bet is to do enough research to put somebody in a list. Now, who should do that research? Well, research is kind of a specialized function. I don't think it's an SDR's job. I think that's an odd concept that we would hire, say, 20 people and say, why don't you each independently come up with your own research program to find out what our market is? I mean, companies own their concept of their market. It is the company's strategy. Why would you delegate the company's strategy to 10, 15, 20 different people, each doing it their own way, when it's the company's responsibility, the CEO's responsibility, my responsibility, to make sure that our go-to-market is targeted where we want to go? That is, if you succeed, you want to like the result. So if you leave it to everybody to choose the targets, you could succeed and not like the result. You might not even have a market. You might just have a bunch of folks that you talk to and that you did business with. So it's, in my view, the business of research comes down to this. Research sufficiently about the nature of these people, not this person, these people, and the kinds of problems they might have, especially your ideal customer. And ask yourself, what goes on in their day that they hate? What is it that keeps them from doing their job as well as they hold themselves accountable for? Is it something that they don't have enough time, they don't have enough resource, do they not have enough support to do their job as well as they hold themselves accountable for? So I like to walk people into an imaginary bar. Remember back when people went to bars? I don't know, this interview will probably be aired in the future when people are going to bars again, but during the old days, like 2 months ago, people went to bars and they drank alcohol in order to get their GABA levels up so that they could actually talk to each other and all that kind of stuff. And so you walk into a bar, but it's a weird bar. It's got one person in it. They're wearing a jacket, and the jacket says in the back, "My ideal customer." And you realize "my" refers to you. And that's the only person in the bar, no bartender. Sit down next to them, in your mind, to their left if they're drinking right-handed, because right-handed people like to keep their right hand free to whack you in case you're a dangerous, invisible stranger in the dark. Sit down to their left, catch their eye, and say, "How was your day?" Listen to everything they say. None of it's going to be positive. None of it's going to be positive. Find one thing where your offering can make a difference financially or economically. That means money, time, or risk. Find one thing where your offering can make a difference in terms of their emotions. Almost always frustration. Occasionally some other emotion like fear. Be careful of fear. It's a live wire. Frustration is very common in business because we're asked to do hard things and we don't have everything we need to do hard things. And then one thing that has to do with strategy, and that means where they're trying to go, that they feel blocked. You might be able to remove a blocker to where they're trying to go. It's about that person and those three things, and then make up a nice, simple few sentences, maybe even one sentence that follows this. And this is tough. If you ever try to say it, you'll choke. It takes a bunch of practice. But sincerely to say, "I believe we've discovered a breakthrough that completely eliminates," and then name those three bad things in common language without talking about your company, without talking about your product, without talking about the category you're in or any of those other things that let them say, "Hey, you know what? We're set." Don't do that. Don't insult them. So ours would be this: "I believe we've discovered a breakthrough that completely eliminates the waste and the frustration. It keeps your best sales reps from being effective on the phone or even using the phone at all." That's what we said. Notice there's economics, waste. There's emotions, frustration. And then there's this other thing, which is strategy. If your reps can't be effective on the phone, you can't get where you're trying to go. You're trying to go somewhere where you're opening up markets. And if you can't talk to invisible strangers, you can't do it. If it doesn't resonate, great. When they come to the meeting, what do they learn about? How to reduce waste, how to reduce frustration or eliminate it, and how to open a path to where they're trying to go. Do they need to buy our product? No. To get value from the meeting, they just need to learn those things. The meeting has independent value, independent of the product. That's the key. And it's got to be in your head that that's true. And then it's easy to sell the meeting because it's a beautiful thing.
I think that the biggest point that you brought up that I definitely wanted to focus on was the fact that the research and preparation really goes into understanding the persona and the ICP more than anything else, more than your product, more than, what you could possibly sell value on. It's all about understanding the person you're speaking with, what they really care about, and then bridging that gap between, okay, let me understand what frustrates you, and then, like you said, sell the meeting from there. And I think that deep down, everyone kind of understands that and knows that persona-based and sort of relevant messaging and understanding all of that is what you have to do to be successful, but it's difficult and it's often not done consistently or effectively at a lot of organizations because the process isn't there to effectively do it. So I don't know if you have any tips in regards to beyond anything outside of that, how to really effectively develop a process for an organization to succeed, focusing specifically on persona and having SDRs really understand that more than anything and use that to their advantage.
Sure. So there's two elements. I'll call it process and meta process. So the process is super simple to run a great sales development organization. A specialist should make the lists. The list should be pooled across the SDRs. Why? Because physical territories don't mean anything when you're operating remotely. So get liquidity by pooling the lists and having a kind of a shark tank there. 3, Open your cadences or sequences with a conversation, not with an email, not with social outreach. Those will have a marginal return, but you burn them out quick. Conversations are reliable and they actually go at the right pace. So start with the conversation, follow up 100% of the time, every conversation, with a thank you email, and follow up every conversation that doesn't lead to a meeting and does not have a hard disqualification. I call it intrinsically disqualified. That is, their company doesn't need you, or the person is completely irrelevant. You couldn't get the right person by asking. Follow those up once a quarter with another conversation. Pretty simple cadence. When folks don't show for meetings, put them back in, call them again, get them to show. Treat them just like, anybody else, right? Except you have the moral advantage that they didn't show, so now you can open the conversation that way. All follow-up conversations should have a one-to-one message. You eliminate the generic scripted message and you go to a one-to-one message. Hey, when we spoke back on May 19th, maybe today's the 20th, who knows, I don't keep track. You said whatever. You said you were walking into a board meeting. I hope it went great. Is now a better time to talk? That kind of thing. So that you're one-to-one on all follow-up conversations, not a one-to-many message. Follow up through the quarters until they're finally ready to buy. So it's a cyclic process, right? So that's the process. The meta process is the personal transformation that an SDR needs to go through in order to be great at the job. So in the meta process, the number one thing is talk to customers, buyers that attended the meetings and did not buy the product. Those are your key audience. That's who you're selling to. You're not actually selling to those who attended the meeting and bought the product. That's a tiny subgroup of no interest whatsoever to you. Your hard job is to get folks to come to the meeting who come because they're interested in what they might learn. So ask them, what did you learn? And if you find out the answer is nothing, go to the folks conducting those meetings, sit in on a few, listen to the recordings, listen to recordings of discovery meetings, asking yourself, what am I learning? If I didn't know anything about this topic, what would I be learning? That's your product. Get your product knowledge deeply into your heart. Believe deeply in the value or the potential value of that meeting for the human being you're speaking with or about to speak with. In all cases, including the case where they don't do business with your company. Then ignore everything except executing. Ignore outcomes. Just execute. Know where your hard spots are. For most people, the hard spots are overcoming their own irrelevant fear of being the invisible stranger. So you've got to feel like that gives you power. So go into yourself and find the power that gives you and the confidence that comes from that, so that you can be humble and say, I know I'm an interruption, and sound like you mean it because you do mean it. That's crucial. You got to work on yourself on the inside in order to be great on the outside. The other meta process you need to run is practice. And it's not role play. Role play is harmful. Aggressive role play, where the person you're role playing with is trying to trip you up, which everybody does because they think it's something, I don't know, important or whatever, is ridiculous. You need to learn. It's like if you were learning to play, I don't know, football, basketball, whatever. If you can't learn to run the route accurately with no one there, you're never going to learn to run the damned route with somebody pushing you all over the place. All it's going to do is make you twitchy. You don't want to be twitchy. You want to sound confident, competent, calm, easy, easy to talk to, right? Oddly enough, that's a product of rehearsal. So rehearse. If you have a script, like ours, we actually teach our people on day one. A brand new SDR is on the phone having 30 conversations on the first day, each one coached. And all we work on is tone. We prefer they keep the words exactly right too, because I haven't met an SDR yet who is a linguistic psychologist and should make their own script. They may be out there. I just haven't met them. I've only met a few tens of thousands. But maybe there's one that's better than our linguistic psychologists and the people working for the FBI. It's possible, right? But, instead of working on like creative writing, what are the exact words? Accept the words that the group has put together, as long as they don't contain any marketing language, any category language, any product language. That's death. But if you contain none of that language, get good at it. I went and climbed a mountain once, a long time ago. I used to climb a lot of mountains. I went down to Mexico in 1973 in February to climb a mountain called Popocatépetl. I couldn't say the name. I'm be damned if I'm going to climb a mountain where I can't pronounce the name, right? So how do I learn to pronounce the name Popocatépetl? Well, you say it 30 times in a row. That's what you do. Not with somebody slapping you around, making fun of you and going, no, it's Popocatépetl. You just say it, right? So just say the script with somebody giving you feedback on your tone. I know I'm an interruption. If you're using this script, or I would call it a breakthrough script, use any script you want. This one happens to work pretty well. I know I'm an interruption. I said it like this. I know I'm an interruption. I'm dead, right? I'm dead, right? If I say, hi, this is Chris from Connect and Sell, I'm dead. If I say, Chris here from Connect and Sell, I'm good. I can move on. You need that feedback. So have somebody give you tone feedback. When you get the tone right, it shapes your own emotions. The key to controlling your emotions is hearing yourself say the words with those emotions. And again, I'll go back to the piano. The way you learn to emote in order to get feeling into a piece of music is to practice the music until you're free enough to put the feeling in it. Practice the script until you're free enough to put the feeling in it. That, based on the belief that this meeting you have on offer has incredible potential value for this human being you're talking to, not for their company, for them, in the case where they never do business with your company. When you believe that, it's the easiest thing in the world to sell that meeting, as long as you don't turn it into a creative exercise around making up language on the fly and hoping you got it right.
Yeah, I love that. I really feel like this idea behind SDRs, being creative with messaging and experimenting, there's merits there and there's times and places for that. But I feel like it's gotten out of hand to where SDRs are owning it, and kind of, like you said, 15 different people are having all their own different processes with their own messaging, and it just gets out of control for the organization. And I really love this idea of just focusing on really executing on the script, not the script itself, because you have to trust that the organization knows what it's doing and knows how to connect with buyers, but instead focusing on the more soft skills that's involved in a cold conversation, your tone, how confident you feel about yourself. And like you said earlier, your ability to tackle your own fear. Although you're the invisible stranger, I think that's a big challenge and a big hill that causes, younger SDRs to really start avoiding the phone, is they can't even get over their own fear of being that disruptor. So I think that's just invaluable advice for reps. And so to close this out, Chris, I really appreciate you joining us today for SDRep. Is there any way that the audience can learn more about you and where you're at, and also learn more about Connect and Sell?
Sure. So I think the most valuable resource that I have out there right now is my podcast, of all things. It's called marketdominanceguys.com. For SDRs, check out the episode, How Many SDRs Does It Take to Unscrew a Light Bulb? And it's pretty fun. It explores topics like, what is the role of the script compared to the voice, the tone of voice? There's an episode about the script is your surfboard and the voice is the surfer. And what does that mean? What does that mean to you as an SDR? It's in the context of what your real job is, which is to help your company dominate markets. And it also will give an SDR some hints as to how the SDR job itself is not just a stepping stone to, say, a better SDR job, a more fun one, or the same one, or whatever, but to a lot of other jobs, not just to an AE. That is, the SDR skill set is the core skill set for senior executives. Being able to hold a conversation with a stranger is the key skill that senior executives have. That's all there is to it. And if you perfect it and you become dominant yourself within your own emotional set and within your own sincerity and truth, man, you can go places. So check out marketdominanceguys.com. If you're interested in Connect and Sell, you can go to connectandsell.com. I have a new site called workfromhomesales.com, focusing on how do we do all this when we're alone at home, or at least professionally alone at home. And it's kind of a different world. And then if you want to take a test drive, I tell you, Connect and Sell is truly a strange experience, having 30 plus conversations in a day. not having to work to get people on the phone, just pushing a button and talking to somebody on your list. Scary as all get out at first, but the next few minutes, half an hour, you get confident, you will completely eliminate your fear and concerns about cold calling within 1 hour. And really, if you take all the rest of the stuff I said and you combine it with a test drive, you might end up in the top 5% of all cold callers in the world in competence and confidence. So check out, connectandsell.com is fine. Follow me on LinkedIn. I post an inordinate amount of strange stuff out there, including actual numbers. So you might be interested in that too.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely have to check that out. And I really appreciate you joining us, Chris. This has been Grayson and AJ and Chris with SDRep. And thank you so much.
Hey, thanks a lot, Grayson. Thanks.